6
apart.
feet. Can't you tell?
Yeah, can't you see that picture behind me? It's
Yes,
6
that's a
feet
big
long.
picture.
Yep.
Yeah, that's why we sat here.
That's good.
And so what's that 10 feet behind you? 10 feet behind you, Paul. Can you tell? Yeah, I can.
That's
We
a
hang
bookshelf.
out on it. We hang out daily, so it's like we live together.
Mm.
All right, Mr. Chair, you are now live on YouTube and we're ready to go.
All right. We'll call the meeting tonight of the Planning Commission this January 6, 2021. If staff could call roll, Ms. Devereaux.
Connie Coleman Lackady,
Present.
Don Daniels,
Present.
James Guerrero,
Present.
Nancy Hudson Eccles,
Present.
Ryan Pearson,
Here.
Paul Wagaman.
Present.
You have quorum, Chair.
Great. Thank you so much. Before us, we have the minutes of December 2nd, 2020. Looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion. We accept the minutes as written.
Mr. Wagaman made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Guerrero, a second. Do we have any discussion or changes or amendments to it? Seeing or hearing none at this time. All those in favor by saying aye of approval?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? No. Hearing? Okay, the minutes pass as written. Thank you. Any changes to our agenda tonight, Ms. Spear?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next is the public comment, where we'll open it up for public that is possibly on the line. They have 3 minutes that they can converse with the fellow commissioners. So we'll open up the public comment at this time. And Ms. Spear, do we have anyone online or asking yet to?
I do not know of any. Ms. Devereaux, do you know of anyone?
No.
No. Okay, so I will, you want me to, you at this time, Ms. Spear, to comment on the letters that we have received addressed to the Planning Commission?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So earlier today, you received a special memo and a couple of letters attached from Ms. Devereaux, and she was forwarding something from me to you. This says there was a single comment letter. We ended up with 3 comment letters over the last couple of days related to the pending update to the Western State Hospital Master Plan. And the Planning Commission was addressed within these letters, which is why we forwarded them to you. Under the City Code 18A20080, Western State Hospital is considered a master plan for a public facility, is what we've been talking about here. And when you go to the code section and actually look at how those are administered and approved and then potentially appealed within the city's structure, the public facilities master plan is something that goes to the director of the department and then ultimately to the hearing examiner. Neither the Planning Commission nor the City Council are involved with the consideration of master plan applications. So we wanted to provide the letters to you just because they were addressed to you, but wanted to let you know that in fact the Planning Commission will not be taking a role in the consideration of this update. And if those letters are resubmitted at the time that we take public comment regarding the Western State Hospital in front of the hearing examiner, that is where those individuals would be able to have their comments taken into the record. So unless there's any other questions, I'll just let it go at that.
Great. Seeing no other comments and no one else on the line regarding public comments tonight. So at this time, we'll close the public comment period. Appreciate it. Next, there's no public hearing tonight, and we do not have any unfinished business. So we'll move to number 8, new business. And first on the agenda is the vote of the 2021 Planning Commission Chair and Vice Chair, that time of year again. So what we'll do at this time for the chair position, I'll open up any nominations at this time. So if any of the fellow commissioners have any nominations, now's the time to speak. Hello? Yes, Mr. Guerrero?
I'd like to nominate Don Daniels for the chair again.
Oh, thank you.
Second that.
All right. Is there any other, we'll take any nominations. Is there any other nominations from the other commissioners for the chair position? Seeing, oh, Ms. Eccles, you unmute yourself. Unmute. We can't hear
Use
you.
sign language.
Yeah, we can't hear you. There.
Sorry,
Oh,
we were having tech, you guys totally went away. We were, sorry.
Technically disengaged.
All right, so we have a nomination for the chair
For Don
position.
Daniels,
Yes, for Don Daniels. Do we have any other nominations?
no.
No other nominations. So at this time, then we'll take a vote for Don Daniels to continue to be the chair of the 2021 Planning Commission. So all those in favor by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations to Don Daniels. Okay, now next we have looking for nominations of vice chair of the Planning Commission for 2021. Do we have any nominations at this time, Ms. Eccles?
Connie Coleman Lackady.
All right, great. Any other nominations for vice chair of the 2021 Planning Commission? Seeing none at this time, so we'll take a vote for,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, we need a second.
not necessarily, but that's okay.
Okay,
But who wants a
apologies.
second?
We do.
I'll second.
We do.
Okay, Mr. Guerrero, second. Okay,
We do.
thank you. So anyway, now we do have a first and a second. And Miss, it's for vice chair for Miss Connie Coleman Lackady. So all those in favor by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Congratulations, Miss Connie Coleman Lackady for vice chair, 2021 Planning Commission.
Yay.
Boy, that's so easy, isn't it?
There we go. Woohoo.
Great, thank you so much.
So in 2022, it's going to be James Guerrero and Ryan Pearson.
Yeah, okay, good job. Yeah, get ready. Yeah.
Not if I get to nominate first.
We take all
Oh, thank-
nominations though, so we vote
Thank
on
you,
everyone.
James, because we got shut out. We couldn't see any of you. We could
Oh,
hear
I'm so
you.
sorry. Okay, so next on our new business is the 2021 Planning Commission Work Plan. Miss Spear?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll share my screen again. This is also included in your packet at page 7, but I'll walk us through it.
Mhm.
So what this document includes is both the 2020 accomplishments for the commission, but also the work plan that is still somewhat tentative, and you'll understand why by the time we get through this discussion for 2021. You'll see, first of all, the members of the Planning Commission, and as you know, there is still a vacancy. There's a potential that that might be filled by the council, and I know I keep giving you different dates, but excuse me, at this point, it looks like the end of the January, there may be a nomination there and some discussion by council. The council liaison in 2020 was Councilmember Boki, and as of yet, they haven't decided who will it be this year, but that will be coming shortly. Staff support, you know, all three of us. Dave Buer now has a new title, Community and Economic Development Director, myself and Ms. Devereaux. The time for meetings has not changed. And then overall, I'm not going to go through all of these things, but I just wanted to bring to your attention, there's actually a wide range of items that the Planning Commission is tasked with helping the City Council about. So there's general planning issues, and that's everything from the annual housing report to the usual comprehensive plan amendment stuff to shoreline master program stuff. But there's also discussion about more of an economic development nature, some redevelopment issues that were identified. And you may see some of this come up within the next year or so on your work plan. And then there's also transportation issues. So you have done in recent years, of course, the annual transportation improvement program approval, the 6-year TIP. But there's other things as well where the Planning and Public Works, the Public Works Engineering Department may be coming to you for some additional feedback. So all of those things fall within your purview. And looking at last year's accomplishments, again, the housing report that you received, the recommendation developed to the City Council regarding the CDBG 5-year consolidated plan, and then the annual action plan from that, the Shoreline Master Program Restoration Plan Review, the 2020 Comprehensive Plan Cycle Amendments, the 6-year TIP, the annual Development Regulation Amendment Package. And if you remember last year, that was really focused on Title 18A cleanup after it was originally adopted the end of the year prior. We had discussions and you took information about where Vision 2050 was, and it was moving its way toward adoption at the end of 2020. You developed and approved a recommended list for the 2021 Comprehensive Plan Amendment docket. And then you were also, of course, working on the Lakewood Station District Sub-Area Plan Package. So the work plan for this year, let me see if I can move through this. What we did is instead of provide specific dates for you, this is laid out essentially by quarters, first, second, third, and fourth of this year. And then there's one of these items that actually is anticipated to move into 2022. The first thing on your item you've already done, congratulations. But you'll see that what has now been added this year are 2, possibly 3 meetings with the Community Services Advisory Board. And this is related specifically to housing issues within the city of Lakewood. Both the Community Service Board and the Planning Commission touch housing in slightly different ways, but there's several overlapping issues right now that the council is wanting some information and recommendation on. And so we're going to be scheduling, again, those couple of joint meetings where the 2 groups can get together and share ideas and maybe develop a joint recommendation to council. There will also be the CDBG and home plan amendments that might be coming to you after City of Tacoma takes some action. The 2021 Comprehensive Plan amendments will be coming to you in the not too distant future, actually. And then Vision 2050, I'll talk about this in more detail in a few minutes, but if you recall, that was coming up for adoption end of last year, and it's actually been adopted now by the Puget Sound Regional Council. So there's now going to be work at the county-wide, which Lakewood is a part of, and then the city-specific levels to implement the policies out of Vision 2050. Be finishing up the Lakewood Station Sub-Area Plan package here in the near future also. We'll be tracking through the county's process to develop the 2022 Buildable Lands Report. Again, you'll be looking at the 6-year TIP. There's a new project that may be coming to you mid-year regarding, quote, excess rights-of-way in the city, meaning those areas where maybe there's rights-of-way owned by the city, but they've never been developed, or because of change in use in the surrounding area, there's no longer the need for that right-of-way. And then there's also areas where the width of a right-of-way is beyond the size of the current road designs that the city uses. So there may be a wider than usual right-of-way that the city is ready to do something else with that extra right-of-way, if you will. There's going to be looking at the big update to the comprehensive plan that is required by state statute come 2024. And Lakewood has already started to take a look at this piecemeal, but you'll be seeing some more information about that as we get forward into summer and fall. There'll be the annual development regulation amendments. This will be technical cleanups. It should be a much smaller package than last year because now we've had 18A in place for a year, so there won't be all of those Scrivener's errors we need to correct. And then the next year's comprehensive plan amendment cycle. The other big one, and this is one that you see may go into 2022, is a look at the request of council and the city manager at the city's overall housing policies and programs. And so there's a lot involved in this discussion. It's not only yourselves as a commission, but again, that Community Services Advisory Board, but then it's also the Human Services Group within the city, all involved with housing issues. And so that'll be coming forward to you probably come fall. Excuse me. And then there may also be design review for commercial zoning districts outside of sub areas. And that may also go into 2022. So that's your work plan. I'm going to turn it over to Dave Buer just in case. I know he's been having communications with the city manager to see if there's anything else that may have changed since this was put before you in this packet.
Again, this is Dave Buer, and can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. No background noise this time.
Okay.
Pretty much Tiffany has hit upon the major points. I've been in conversations with the city manager on this proposed work plan. The housing policies section that Tiffany referenced is a new part of the commission's work plan. I believe that came about as a result of city council goals and policy study session in the early part of 2020 prior to COVID. I believe that was done in February, early March. And so I was requested to add this, so you see it now as an item. This goes before the city council for their review next Monday evening, which would be January the 11th, and it moves forward for adoption on January 19th. As always, it's always subject to change. That's another reason why we've placed it in quarters versus with more specific dates to give us a little bit more flexibility. I will add one more comment about meeting with the Community Services Advisory Board. In my conversation with Brian Humphreys, who works for that group, oftentimes the CSAB is not that familiar with some of the city's housing policies or understands them as well as we do. So this is an opportunity for us to explain to them, the reasons behind its different types of zones, why we have a housing incentives program, and discussion of what works and what doesn't. I don't feel that they feel they're well-rounded in the topic. They focus primarily on the community development block grant and home programs funding, and not so much into the inner workings of development regulations. So I believe that will be the basis of the conversations that we would have with that group.
Great. Thank you, Dave. Any fellow commissioners have any questions for either Mr. Buer or Ms. Spears? Yes, Mr. Wagaman.
I want to go, it's everybody's touched on it so far, this meeting with this housing group. Will this be an opportunity for us to talk a little bit about what was brought up with the Lakewood Station sub-area plan, that we had some comments about potential housing issues over there for low income?
Yes.
That's a big answer, yes.
We'll have to make sure that timing works because, as you know, you're scheduled to take action actually by the first meeting in February, so February 3rd. The council won't take action until April, so for sure you're going to be able to meet with the Community Services Advisory Board at least once prior to the council action. See if we can make sure that gives you plenty of time to discuss what you're asking about, Mr. Wagaman.
Yeah, but let me also add that this is based upon what the council directs.
Yeah.
At this point, this is only a recommendation, and this is new. They have not seen this before, and the city manager looked at me a little strange when I said, maybe you ought to be doing this. So that still needs to be approved, and that's a new item to your work plan that we've not seen in past years.
Great. Any other questions then from fellow commissioners? Seeing none at this time. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Buer and Ms. Spears, on that information. Moving along, we do have any reports from staff. Do you have any reports, additional reports?
Yes, Mr. Chair. And before I share my screen again, I'll just wind your mind back. Go back. When we were all in person and we were all in the city council chambers and we had a big, long, meaty discussion about how legal structure is and the planning structure is in the state of Washington, and how that trickles down into the planning and strategies and policies and development codes in the city of Lakewood. That's where we're going to go one more time tonight. This is where we get into a little more about what's happening with Vision 2050. So now that you've rewound your mind and you're thinking back to all that, here we go. So as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, I believe it was October actually, Vision 2050 was adopted by the Puget Sound Regional Council's Executive Board and General Assembly. And so what I'm going to be walking us through tonight at a high level is, now that that's done, what are the next steps and how they affect the city of Lakewood specifically. So here's my little umbrella I was gesturing with my hands, what I was thinking about. The Growth Management Act is kind of the top tier of state law. There's others that also affect land use, but this is the biggie in the state of Washington that sets out the baseline for all jurisdictions in Puget Sound, certainly, but including Lakewood, how they're supposed to identify types of properties and lands and allow certain activities or prohibit certain activities, depending on a number of factors. Underneath the state statute, there is what are called the multi-county planning policies. And for the Puget Sound region, meaning King, Pierce, Snohomish, and Kitsap counties, it is encapsulated within that document called Vision 2050. So Puget Sound Regional Council is the recognized group, and it has elected officials and staff involved from all of those 4 counties I mentioned, as well as cities, that adopts these policies. Now that that's done, there's a certain amount of time under which each of the 4 counties and all of the cities within those counties need to verify that their county level planning policies and then jurisdiction specific comprehensive plans are all consistent. So the idea here is from growth management down to the city's comprehensive plan, as well as vice versa. There's continuity and consistency between all of these different levels in terms of land use. Vision 2050, a little more specifically, there's 3 parts to the big document. So it includes not only those multi-county planning policies, it also includes what's called the regional growth strategy. And this is an idea or a concept by which the 4 counties are looking as a whole where most growth is going to be happening over the next 30-year period. So the reason this is called Vision 2050 is it was adopted in 2020 and it's looking ahead for 30 years. What happened last year was the first time this document was updated in 10 years. So come 2030, it will be presumably adopted a new document called Vision 2060. And again, it'll be looking ahead 30 years. The other things that are included and are not included, but are kind of informed by, governed by, if you want to call it that, Vision 2050 is the Regional Transportation Plan and the Regional Economic Strategy. But we're really focused on this Vision 2050 document right now. So what you have here in red is just the 1-sentence summary of what it is. It's multi-county planning policies, actions, and then a regional growth strategy to talk to or direct all of the jurisdictions, again, in those 4 counties, how they're going to plan to grow between now and 2050. Generally speaking, with these 4 bullets, you'll see this document is similar in structure to Vision 2040, although there's a few new regional level issues identified, including housing, as well as equity, racial and economic equity, as well as health and how that is kind of encapsulated and informs all of the different policies of all of the jurisdictions. In terms of timeline, Vision 2050, it's almost like the International Building Codes. So those of you familiar with that process, the state adopts an international code every 3 years or so, and then there's about a year for local jurisdictions to update their plans and codes to comply with the International Building Codes. Similar process here. Vision 2050 has been adopted by the PSRC. County Council here in Pierce County has until the beginning of 2022 to adopt Vision 2050 with then a process of ratification. So the city of Lakewood would be getting something recommended to it by Pierce County early next year to then say yes to. Once all that is done, city has until 2024 to make sure that its comprehensive plan and development regulations and everything else are consistent with these multi-county planning policies from Vision 2050. A lot of information on this, but just to say quickly, there's different types of jurisdictions identified within Vision. And Lakewood, as you see there in red, is called a quote core city. That means that it's supposed to be absorbing a lot of economic and population growth over time. It's also right next to what's now been classified a major military installation, obviously JBLM. And it's also relatively near the Nisqually Indian Reservation. So all of these things help direct the city to recognize where within Vision 2050 there's things that would apply to it. On the bottom half of this slide, you'll see a chart with a lot of numbers. And the red arrow points to the one that we're talking about right now. The core cities, which in Pierce County are Lakewood, Puyallup, and University Place, have been assigned through this whole thing the duty, the responsibility to absorb, plan for 85,000 more people between now and 2050. Not 85,000 each, but all three in total, 85,000 people. So Lakewood would be taking some share of that number. And then on the employment side, been tasked with absorbing 44,000 jobs between now and 2050. So a couple of things. First of all, it's important to remember that the city's comprehensive plan is a 20-year planning document. Vision 2050 is a 30-year planning document. So it's two different time horizons. And also that these two numbers, the 85,000 people and the 44,000 jobs, again, is not all coming to Lakewood. It's a share of that coming to Lakewood. And the process of figuring out that share is ongoing right now. Both Mr. Buer and myself are involved at the staff level. It's called a target setting process. It started last fall. And there's literally negotiations going on between jurisdictions at the staff level right now about how much each jurisdiction can plan for, can absorb over time, and where there may need to be some change around of who's going to take what. And so there's going to be this conversation among those three jurisdictions first. And then it's also going to open up a little wider to the smaller cities and towns, the city of Tacoma, which is in its own class due to population size, and then unincorporated county. So all of that sausage making is happening, but by the end of this year, that decision will come before the Pierce County Council and be completed. City of Lakewood is also a regional growth center, and you'll see that in this map here. And it is actually right now the same boundaries as the downtown sub-area that you looked at and recommended a couple of years ago now. But within Vision 2050, core cities are supposed to be encouraging growth within regional growth centers, as well as near high capacity transit stations. So that's exactly what Lakewood did with the downtown plan. If you remember, a high proportion of future jobs as well as population have now been targeted to be within the downtown sub-area. Again, there's the high capacity transit as well. And within Vision 2050, core cities are encouraging growth near high capacity transit stations. And now we're working on the Lakewood Station District. You're looking at it right now within the next couple of meetings, actually. So you've got the station district with the Sounder Station being developed as a sub-area. So all of what the city is doing right now with that sub-area planning is very consistent and following along with the idea here that's voiced in Vision 2050. And then speaking a little more about those two sub-areas, if you look at, again, that 85,000 people and the 44,000 jobs, if nothing were to change right now with what is being planned for in the two sub-areas, there's 2257 housing units and almost 7,400 jobs identified within downtown. And then there's almost 1,200 housing units and almost 1,200 jobs identified for the Lakewood Station District sub-area. When you take all of that together, add it up, you end up with about 3,400 housing units. And then looking at these two factors, these are persons per households, meaning it's not just one person in a housing unit, right? Average across the board, somewhere between 2.2 and 2.4. That means Lakewood right now with these two sub-areas is planning for either somewhere between 7,500 and 8,300 people within those housing units for the sub-area, and planning for about 8,500 jobs. This does not include the rest of the city. This is just these two sub-areas. But this is just showing again that there is a significant amount of growth, especially when you look at the historical growth rates in the city of Lakewood. There's a lot of growth that's anticipated here within the next 20 years in the two sub areas. The other thing, or two other things that Vision 2050 talk about now are those major military installations I mentioned. And so right now we've got JBLM identified, obviously the largest one in our area, the largest one in the state. But there are a couple of others here you'll see in teal green. That's Naval Station Kitsap, and there's another station up in Everett. And then in the city of Seattle, there's actually a Coast Guard station.
Mm-hmm.
But down here in JBLM, obviously there's a lot of coordination between the city, but also through South Sound Military and Communities Partnership, a lot of ongoing open conversation inside and outside of the fence. And so Lakewood is actually used kind of as a model by PSRC of how to have this military and jurisdictional discussions ongoing. The last piece I'll mention is tribal interaction and connection. These are the actual boundaries of the Nisqually Indian Reservation, and we're not contiguous, but Lakewood is obviously nearby. And there's a longstanding good and open, again, communication and coordination between the Nisquallies and the city. But that's something that Vision 2050 encourages throughout the Puget Sound region. So one more time, where we sit is the city is right now participating in that sausage making, if you will, about how much growth would be assigned to the city of Lakewood specifically. Later this year and into next year, there'll be the updates to the countywide planning policies based on the multi-county planning policies. So we're going back up those colors of the rainbow. This Lakewood will ratify, presumably, those countywide planning policies early next year. And then there will be the process between this cycle and 2024, the updates to the city's comprehensive plan and development code to be consistent with all of those policies. And for instance, this year right now, you've got part of the docket, the new energy and climate change chapter. That's something in response to Vision 2050, as well as some other legislative actions the state has taken. And again, the sub-area plan that's coming before you right now is also something to help enact Vision 2050 at Lakewood's level. So I know that was an awful lot to throw at you, but just to let you know, Vision 2050 is now done. It's been adopted, and it's now up to the county and the cities to start figuring out how to be consistent with it in the planning that it does. So any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Mr. Guerrero, unmute yourself. Got it.
Thank you. Just to clarify, so we do this planning process periodically, and we're projecting for growth, and so we have to do these planning things that kind of set us up to have that growth in a reasonable way. Is there a backward look too? So it's 2020. Did we do this back in 2000 and say we're going to have this much growth, and now we can look back and say, well, this is what happened, or is it only a forward-looking piece?
I'll say something, and I know Dave is chomping at the bit. So the Vision 2050 and the comprehensive plan at the city of Lakewood level are forward-looking, right? They certainly have historical information in the city's comprehensive plan, but it is a forward-looking document. Kind of the counterpoint to all of this forward-looking planning are what are called the buildable lands reports.
Mm-hmm.
And that is also required under the Growth Management Act. And that says, okay, looking back 5, 6, 7 years, because the rotation of how often they've been done has changed a couple of times. But that is looking back at what did you plan for City X and what actually has been built? And are you consistent with your own rules and policies and anticipation of growth or not? And are you consistent with the Growth Management Act? And if not, why not? What can be done to, quote, bend the trend of growth? Or do you need to change your policies or even your zones? Things like that. So there's forward looking in the policies and comp plan. Then there's the buildable lands report that kind of comes back and says, really, did you do it or not? Dave, anything else?
Oh, I will just point out, if you take a look at Lakewood's population growth history over time, say over a 20-year period, we're either at a flat rate or 0.5 or 0.5%, less than 1% per year. So our growth rate is very small, in part because your infill site, or we are infill city, and there's just not a whole lot of raw land available. By way of example, if we build 100 single-family units a year, that's a high number. This year we built 58 single-family residences, and we have 11 permits for multi-family development. When you take a look at us in relationship to Puyallup, we do not grow as fast. So I get a little concerned when outside agencies say, we think you're going to grow and have a population of 85 or 90,000 people over the next 20 years. I just don't find that to be realistic, nor does the city manager. And so we've tried to be more circumspect about our growth. Now, late in 2020, we began this sausage making process that Tiffany mentioned. And the core cities all met, along with the consultants, to talk about population trends and what we could expect or not expect. They asked us to provide some preliminary numbers and then share those in the fall of 2020. We went to the city council, provided them the information, basically said, if you take a look at the historical trends plus what we know, we think that our population over the next 20 years will probably be around 67,000 people. So if you're asking us to absorb 85,000 over a 20-year period, Lakewood can say comfortably that we can take 7,000, also knowing that we have planned for more than that. But that's what we think our real, more true population number would be. Now, we expected the other cities to come in and provide information, and nobody has gone to their city councils except Lakewood. So we're waiting to hear from the UP and a few other cities, Auburn, to find out what their city council wants to do. But we do have a preliminary number for growth rate of around 0.5% or 7,000 people over 20 years. So that's the number that we are beginning negotiations with. We also did a trend analysis that actually showed it at around 63,000. So even I think the 67,000 population number is very high. So I think we've done the math. We looked at our historical growth rate, and what we're presenting, I think, is reasonable. I also think that other cities may want more population, but I also think that some of the core cities don't want to have 85,000. That represents some major changes in their communities as well as their quality of life. So much has yet to take place as those numbers go forward, and we'll see what happens. Either myself or Tiffany will keep you informed as it moves forward.
Great. Any other questions for Mr. Buer or Mrs. Spear? I don't hear any, don't see any. Okay, great. Thank you so much for the presentation on that. Any other reports from Ms. Spear? Do you have any other reports?
No, just a heads up that we are on a 2-week cycle again. So our next meeting will be January 20th. And at that point, we'll be looking at the Lakewood Station District sub-area documents. They've been updated based on the public hearing process that you held last year. And we've also spent a lot of time addressing the question that Mr. Wagman brought up tonight, the displacement of current residents, the issue of affordable housing for people that live there now or may move there in the future. That will be highlighted more in the new version that you're going to get. But then potentially you would be taking action on February 3rd regarding the Lakewood Station District. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry I didn't ask you this prior to this meeting this evening, but as I've mentioned now, and you've heard a couple of times, Monday night is where that work plan will be discussed with the City Council at a study session format. If by chance you're able to make it on the 11th, if not, no worries at all. But that will be when they're taking a look at the Planning Commission work plan and maybe reacting to it that you might want to hear. I think that's it.
So are you saying that you're asking us to be in attendance on January 11th?
I'll defer to Mr. Buer. I think if you as the chair could be there would be great. I don't know if everyone needs to be there, but I don't know.
It's not necessary that the full commission be present. you will have an opportunity to meet with the council one-on-one later in the year. But January is for them to take action on the work plan. To have the chair present is not a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's not necessary, and you may or may not be called to provide additional comments.
So is this similar to in the past where I just read off the
No.
work?
No,
No.
you're basically in the audience with us.
Oh, awesome.
And when we make a presentation, we will probably say that the chair is present or available on Zoom should the council have any questions of the chair. And
Okay.
call it quits.
Okay.
Because keep in mind, they're reviewing your work plan, they're reviewing CSAB, they're reviewing the police department, the Parks and Recreation Department. I know the city council, the city manager wants to go fast on it.
Okay. So
There's so many of them.
that's January 11th at what time?
7 p.m.
Okay. Okay.
And again, if you can make it, great. If not, no worries at all. There'll be a week of time where we can reach out to you with any questions the city council may have by chance before they were to take action on the plan. If there's some reason why you're unable to be there.
Right. Great. All right. Any other comments or reports from fellow commissioners? Yes, Miss Eccles. Unmute, unmute, unmute. Unmute, unmute, unmute.
Okay,
There.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So this has to do with Oak Brook neighborhood and power poles. And I have been inundated with calls from Oak Brook residents and complaints, and they are up in arms that you are putting power poles in Oak Brook where there is not any power poles in Oak Brook. And I am sorry if I should know about this, but I don't recall ever it crossing the desk before now. Okay, Dave.
Yes, Mr. Buer.
This project was something that originated out of a policy presented by the city council many years ago to install streetlights throughout the community. Typically, we use a variety of monies to do this, including CDB, Community Development Block Grant Fund. In this particular case, Public Works Director proposed a streetlight program for a section of the Oak Brook neighborhood. It was approved. A contract was approved, and work was about ready to commence when members of that neighborhood strongly objected to the project. This went before the city council on Monday night. The city council heard from the staff. The basic decision was, do we move forward with the project or not? And where the neighbors were upset were with, one, they did not want wooden poles. They wanted concrete or aluminum poles. And two, they did not want overhead electrical wires throughout their neighborhood. The council debated this. The motion was made to suspend or terminate the contract. There was a second. Then the council members voted. Keep in mind that one council member resigned, John Simpson, so there are only 6. 3 council members voted to move forward with termination, and 3 council members voted to not move forward with termination. So we ended up on a 3-3 vote, which is a tie. If there is a tie, the motion fails. So to my knowledge, the city is moving forward with the installation of streetlights in that neighborhood with wooden poles and electrical wires overhead.
So you've just told me that it was a tie of 3-3. It should fail, but they are moving forward. So what legal right do they have to move forward if it was a tie?
I'm not here to talk about someone's legal rights one way or the other. I'm here to present information. I am not a city attorney. And I see Tiffany raising her hand.
Okay, Tiffany?
I think what you're hearing Dave say is that the motion was to end the contract and stop it. but the motion failed because it was a 3-3 tie. And so the motion died, meaning it's going to go forward as it was prior to the council taking the vote. So they didn't do anything other than take a vote, and because it died, the project is unchanged and is moving forward.
Okay, I understand that. So what at this point can the citizens of Oak Brook do? Because I mean, we're looking at this. I was talking to Charlene Richardson this evening, and I know that when Doug Richardson was the mayor there, anytime there was a new project, and anytime they could bury lines, that was the priority. So why would they take a community that is one of your better communities of Lakewood and start pissing people off? I mean, I'm moving from Oak Brook, so it's neither here nor there for me, but it's a very nice neighborhood, and you are starting to tick people off in that neighborhood. And I think you guys need to know that.
I think the council is very aware of the animosity that people have towards this project. But I would also ask that you listen very carefully to the debate that took place between council members on this. It was very clear that in other neighborhoods, the city of Lakewood has installed wooden poles or streetlights with wires. And there was some concern that if we're going to go ahead and start changing up the design for each specific neighborhood, that's not what they consider to be appropriate. There also gets to be the issue of a precedent. If a neighborhood comes in and says we want a certain style of street light and it costs, in this particular case, this neighborhood would have costed over $640,000. The wooden poles and the overhead wiring was around $180,000. This also became a bit of a budget question for the council.
So they would rather do overhead electrical, and then for every storm, pay astronomical amounts for people to come in after hours and put power back up, because that's where you're going to see. We have wind, we have storms here, and I live in the back of Oak Brook, and we hardly ever lose power, ever, because we have underground electrical. The rest of Oak Brook, I hear on Nextdoor all the time, oh, we've lost power, we've lost power. So why would we put in and spend money on brand new power and not have it be the best?
Ms. Eccles, I'm not here to debate the issue with you. The decision's been rendered by the city council. I don't know how to address your questions other than to recognize and understand that you're not happy with what the city council has chosen to do.
So what do I tell the people, my neighbors? I mean, I've lived in Oak Brook for, well, say I'm 58. So I've lived in Oak Brook for 56 years. What do I tell all the people that are knocking on my door and ringing my phone saying, you're on the city council? What is it? Why did you let this happen? Or
Well, you're not on the city council.
Right. Planning commission, excuse me.
You're on the planning commission.
Yes.
This has not been within the purview of the commission to talk about capital improvement projects other than for streets and roads. The area there where the city made a big mistake, and this was acknowledged by both the city manager and public works director at the meeting, was that the public outreach was very poor. And had it been done better, this issue would have been brought forward and it would have been handled in a different manner. But part of the problem the city had is that the contract had to start at a certain date by Wednesday of this month, or Wednesday tomorrow, or be looking at major damages for contract delay. So they didn't have a whole lot of time. But I will tell you that if you go back and take a look at the comments that they made, they were all very, very thoughtful. And there was also quite a bit of concern over what had happened, and they didn't like the position that they were in. I guess my comment to you about what to tell people in the community is, one, we learned some important lessons about public outreach, but two, ultimately, this rested with the decision on the council. And if they're still unhappy, all I can say is express that unhappiness to them, because it's not something that I can address, nor you at this point.
So Ms. Eccles, there was an email I just received tonight that says Lakewood City Council will hold a special meeting Thursday, January 7th, 2021 at 7 o'clock regarding Oak Brook Neighborhood Streetlight Project.
Oh, okay.
So Zoom on the city's probably website, they can Zoom in. They can, I don't know if it's going to be public hearing or any comments, but there is a special Lakewood City Council meeting tomorrow night at 7 o'clock.
Can you forward me that email?
Yep,
Is that
absolutely.
something that you can share? Thank you.
That-
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I wasn't aware that that meeting was being planned.
Yeah, I just received this thing, this evening and by the city. So there you go. You can tell them they can, if they're willing, if the commission, the council is going to be willing to take comments or not, but at least it is on the agenda for a special meeting tomorrow
Okay,
night.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I will forward that to you.
Okay, so I'm done with my rant. Thank
No
you.
problem. Thank you. And any other comments from the commissioners?
Oh, I have one more.
Yes, ma'am.
People call and ask me questions. So
Yeah.
on Zircon, looks lovely, by the way. I love the sidewalks. And at first I wasn't a proponent for sidewalks at all in Oak Brook, but it looks very lovely. But at the beginning of this, I thought that there was a bike lane also that was going to be on there. Was there some kind of confusion on that development?
I don't know. I would have to go back and talk to our public.
Okay.
director.
People had just asked me that and I said I didn't know, so that I would ask. So, okay.
Okay, Ms. Eccles, I do have a question for you, if I could.
Okay, yes.
In regards, you mentioned last time that you are possibly moving out of the Oak Brook or out of the area. Is there any timeline that you're looking at or?
I was just talking about that with Connie and probably I was going to send a letter in that said I should be here through like March 31st.
Okay.
But if you guys have somebody else that's ready to jump on board, I'm going to give March 31st as my last day of being on the planning commission.
So if you could send that letter into the council
will.
and
But if
use
you
that.
if you have somebody else that's ready to go, I can go a little earlier too. So it's whatever works best for the planning commission.
Okay, and that's up to the city council as well, is who will, look at the applicants and stuff, but the more heads up, the better. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And
Yep.
thanks again for your service.
Uh-huh.
Mr. Weigeman.
I just want to, Nancy made the comment about wind and power. I mean, the power out in Oak Brook is underground. These poles are coming up. We just run the street lighting up overhead, and so you just lose street lighting if you had wind damage, I think is how it's put together.
Yeah, that's correct.
There are power poles out in that neighborhood. The power poles are located in the backyard. In that particular part of Oak Brook, there is no underground facility.
Okay. Appreciate any
So
other.
that's all. That's already above ground then. So, okay.
Okay, great. I hope that helps you, and I will forward this email to you, Ms. Eccles. Okay, hearing or seeing no other comments, Mr. Pearson, nothing. Okay, Mr. Guerrero, nothing. Okay, at this time, I appreciate everyone's comment, and we look forward to seeing everyone on January 20th. Please let staff know if you're able to attend. Would be greatly appreciative. And thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon. Oh, Miss Connie Coleman-Lackady, sure.
I was just saying goodbye.
Oh, okay, no problem. Thanks a
Bye.
lot. See you, everyone. Thank you.